Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Shelace Shoemaker on the podcast.
Shoemaker.
See, we got it. See, I was practicing the name a couple of times before we got started. I got it down pat. She's an IFBB figure pro coming to us all the way from Nevada, as well as a healthy lifestyle and prep coach, as well as a teacher. So, I mean, she's basically a jack of all trades. She does it all. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Shelace, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So first of all, what's the weather like in Nevada today?
Today it's beautiful. It's supposed to be 80 degrees today, so it's absolutely beautiful.
I hate her already, everyone. I mean, it's like 50 degrees up here in Minnesota, and we were talking about it right before we started recording, and it's about to snow. Hope maybe this weekend. So yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. But before I depress everyone with my weather woes, Shelace, why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what inspired and what motivated you to get in shape and adapt this lifestyle?
Okay, well, so I've always been athletic. I grew up playing volleyball, basketball, and softball. I actually became a teen mom, so sports kind of went out of the window for me my senior year, but still had that athletic background. And so when I was in college, um, lifting weights in the gym became my outlet. That was something I could do on my own time, and I didn't need a team. I didn't need a coach. I could do that when I had the time. So that became my outlet. And I actually had a trainer in a gym approach me one time. Just got back from Mexico, so I was all tanned up and lifting weights. And he goes, "Oh, are you getting ready for the competition that's coming up?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Well, there's a competition in June. Are you getting ready for it?" I'm like, "No, I have no idea what you're talking about." So got interested. A little bit more curious about what he was talking about. And this was 11 years ago. And so I kind of looked into it, met with a coach, found out what I needed to do, and had a friend who was interested in competing as well. So we started lifting and getting into it, and it was history from there.
I cannot tell you the amount of times that we've heard stories of just trainers walking up to random people in gyms and just be like, "Hey, you getting ready for this show?" And then I don't know if that's like their line that they use to like get people to start going to compete or whatever, because that's like, I mean, you're going to be like our 100 and whatever guest for bodybuilders, and that's like, that's been the answer at least a couple dozen times. So I don't know what these, I mean, I don't know if like as part of your training class for being a trainer, they have to tell you like, "Hey, walk up to people that look like they're in shape and, ask them if they're competing." But yeah, that's just so fascinating. But one of the questions that I love to ask all of the bodybuilders, especially that I have on the podcast, is because I always find that if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape, whether it comes down to, I mean, their diet, their nutrition, how many reps they do. I mean, there's so many little things that add up to the overall package that people end up seeing. And I will always say, if you're to walk up to someone and say, "Hey, what did you train for that body part?" I mean, I want my body part to look just like that. What works best for them 99% of the time is not going to work as good for you. Was that a struggle for you when you were getting started, sort of figuring out what worked best for your specific body?
Oh, absolutely. Because I was green. I didn't know. I didn't know anything. It was new to me. Bodybuilding was new to me. Like I remember watching it when I was younger, and being fascinated by it. Loving the magazines, getting Oxygen, getting Muscle and Fitness, and all those magazines. But I had no clue, not a clue. So it was just kind of being in there and lifting weights because I enjoyed it. And um, probably I would say the majority of the time was just going through the motions because I wasn't, didn't have that mind muscle connection and understand that part of it. So um, yeah, it evolved from there for sure. Definitely coaching. I needed a coach. Absolutely.
I mean, well, and I always say too, you're just basically like your own mad scientist, kind of, where you're trying to concoct your own potion, basically trying to figure out what works best for you. And it's just, it's a lot of trial and error. And I think with a lot of things in life, I mean, it's really just about how many times you can get back up and just, just keep going, because very rarely will you find that one person where, the first time they go to the gym, the first time they start working out, they find exactly what works right for them. But another question that probably my favorite question to ask is, because everyone's genetics are different. I mean, I've found this out the hard way. Everyone always has that one body part when they get started in the gym that really, really takes off. And everyone always has that one body part that just lags behind, that they just have to train into oblivion to get it to catch up. I mean, I'll give you mine first. I mean, my back was just the one thing that really took off for me, just because I had jobs all throughout college. I was a warehouse worker, so lifting and loading heavy packages. Where I mean, you either got a really nice back or you quit. Those were basically the two options that presented themselves to you. But I'm also 6'3", so anything lower body is just shot. Where I mean, literally, I could. I don't even want. I'll get emotional talking about, because like I train it like 3 times a week, and just I still have friends in my gym that still make the joke, oh hey Ryan, you plan on training legs anytime this year? And then it's like, oh okay, come on, that's a low blow. Calves are my least favorite, just because that is so genetic. Where I mean, I always said I could inject pure muscle into my calves, nothing would happen. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
Um, I would definitely say my upper body was always my strength. I've always had these broad shoulders. So that was definitely, I loved training them because.
I was gonna say I had her back up because I was afraid that we wouldn't be able to fit her in the screen.
Yeah. So, I mean, even like, and going back to those days, but even in my like yearbook pictures, like I had a nice set of shoulders. So definitely was blessed with the shoulders. Um, and kind of like you, legs were not my thing. I still struggle with them. Um, my quads, I would say, are my weakest area for me. Like I feel like that's where I need a lot of the work. I always get feedback on my glutes because my glutes are so big. And they need more shape, but like I would love to see more shape in my quads and more size in my quads for sure.
So coming from someone that, thankfully, okay, it's been a while since we've had someone that's had lower body problems like I've had. So I do have to ask, how do you like to train lower body to try to get that growth?
Um, how do I like to train it? Well, I was like in the off season, I was doing legs 3 times a week, and I would focus like one day was specifically it was quads, hammering them, hammering them, hammering them, and so I would usually do quads and hamstrings. One day would be glutes and hamstrings, and then the next day would be glutes, or sorry, quads and glutes together. So I was hitting quads twice a week. Um, Not that it helped much, but I do like to go heavy. uh, it's been hard because I've had 3 knee surgeries. Same knee. I had 3 surgeries within a year on the same knee. So there's definitely some imbalances there that I'm still trying to work with, even after all this time. That was years ago, like I would say probably 6, 7 years ago. No, even longer than that. But still some imbalances that I'm dealing with. So I definitely still see that issue when I'm in the gym, and I still favor it a little bit. So yeah, now it's still hitting legs twice a week at this point, and so it's quads and glutes, and then glutes and hamstrings.
See, I'm writing all that stuff down because I'm desperate for anything. So it's literally, I'm taking everyone's advice and I'm pulling it together, and I'm seeing if I can come up with something that works for me. I mean, I also like to go on bike rides. I like to do a little bit of cardio, so I don't know with that. But yeah, again, anyone's info, any other guests out there, anyone out there, comment down below what you guys do for legs. Then, so anything that we can get, anything to help me out. But I love to say, because we were talking about this prior, that the reason why I love having bodybuilders on so much is because the general public just sees you guys as just working out and then going on stage and posing. They don't see, the vast majority of what you guys go through when it comes to your prep with your diet and just all that dedication that goes into it. What was that adjustment like for you when you went on your first prep? Because I always say, just to be able to get into shape to go on a prep takes so much hard work, dedication, determination. Going on a prep, that is just notching things up to an extreme level where, I mean, your diet has to be perfect. You have to get all of your workouts in. I mean, your life just becomes so scientific. What is that like for you when you flip that switch and then you go into prep mode?
Okay, well, I'm gonna back up just a little bit. So when I first started 11 years ago, when that trainer approached me, actually, my lifestyle then was I was just getting out of college, as still trying to get my career going. I was a teacher, that kind of thing. So um, my nutrition was not the greatest. Like we ate porta subs. I would drive home and pick up fast food. It was spaghetti. It was egos for breakfast, or maybe not even having a breakfast. It was orange juice in the morning. It was just a very different lifestyle for sure. And so when I switched to the competition diet, it was a huge adjustment for me because I didn't live that lifestyle before. I had all the freedom I wanted with my food. Didn't care what I was putting inside my body, and I totally switched to a very strict diet. So that was really hard. And my first show, my post rebound was awful. My legs were the same width the entire way down for a good 10 days because I didn't reverse properly. I didn't get the coaching to get me to reverse properly. I didn't get that advice or anything. So my first prep was pretty awful. So that was, it kind of did, um, I guess, dissuade me from trying to do a competition again because it was such an adjustment. Over the years, I came back about 9 years later from that show and started competing again. And I had started to live the lifestyle a little bit more. I was eating healthier, making better choices, coaching people on how to make better choices as well. And so that adjustment into the prep lifestyle wasn't as huge. And it's a lot easier for me now because I just eat that way. That's my lifestyle. I make better choices with my nutrition. I know how to eat clean. I know when to, if I am eating dirty, how to adjust my food the rest of the day. When to eat, um, you know, to choose those refeeds for a purpose, that kind of stuff. So it's definitely a lot easier than it used to be. So it's not as I don't know, it's not as big of an adjustment as it once was.
Those first prep stories, I mean, yeah, those are usually the most interesting ones for me to listen to. But yeah, I mean, just to get used to that is something that, I mean, I tried as for fun, as to support a friend in college. I tried to prep for, I lasted 2 weeks on the prep diet, and then I was like, okay, I can't. I was like, nope. I'm sorry. I support you, but dude, I can't do this anymore. So yeah, that's just another where, yeah, just that.
And I'll say this too. I think who your coach is makes a huge difference in what their philosophies are. I've had a coach in the past it was only one type of meat, and it was broccoli and asparagus and rice. That's all you get. Or is tilapia and asparagus, and that's all you get. And that was really hard. Eating the same meal 6 times a day, you just can't. Your body just can't function that way. So working with different coaches and different philosophies has really opened up my eyes as to what can be done during prep and what is okay and what isn't okay, and that you can still eat fruit for a while, and you can still have, it doesn't have to be as strict if you're meeting your needs and you're eating clean. So I definitely, your coach makes a big difference on that too, if they know how to feed you properly.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we've heard so many stories with coaches too, where yeah, that the right coach can make change wonders for the athlete, and it really is down to the coach, because yeah, we've had some good coach stories, and we've definitely had some bad coach stories. But one of the training techniques that I've heard so many people on this podcast, they love it and they use it a lot, is time under tension. Do you use a lot of time under tension in the training that you do?
Um, Not a lot, but it definitely is a part of it for sure. I love it. That's probably one of my favorites, just because it is such a challenge. um, but yeah, earlier in my prep in the off season, I do use it a lot. You just have to be careful with that because it can be hard on the joints. So it's definitely mixed in with everything else. So I do high volume, time under tension, heavy days. I usually start my weeks a little bit heavier and go lighter in the later in the week when I'm heavier when I'm fresh, lighter when I've been working all week and a little bit tired, more tired. So yes, I do love time under tension. I think it does definitely has a place, and I do utilize it, and I have my clients use it too.
I was gonna say my back is definitely feeling my time under tension that I did yesterday for my back. I woke up about an hour and a half ago, and yeah, I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be an interesting thing, sitting down and talking to on the podcast for a while. It's gonna be real interesting on the good old back there. But yeah, it's something that I've started a few months ago, and it's I've really enjoyed it. But probably the biggest myth and stereotype that I love to bust on this podcast. And we talked about this before we started recording as well. And I mean, it's gotten better the last 5 years due to Instagram, but there are just still so many women that have that fear that if they walk into the gym and they touch one weight, they do one bicep curl, they do one thing that has anything to deal with anything that's not cardio, basically, they're just going to put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight. And, first of all, good luck. And if that does happen, I'll give you my number and, you're going to talk to me and I'll spend my entire life savings. And I know all of my guests would spend probably their entire life savings on talking to you for 5 minutes then too. But I mean, it's just such a myth. But did you have that myth when you were getting started? And even if you didn't, I mean, being that, you help people out now and you're a prep coach and also bodybuilder, I mean, I bet you get asked this all the time. How do you like to respond to that?
Um, Deep down, I laugh. I'm kind of like you. I'm like, shoot, had I known it was that easy, I would have figured that out a long time ago. No, I try to educate as much as I can when people say and make those comments. It's hard because they have that misconception. But I remind them that it does take a lot of time. And I'm like, wait a minute, it's not just the lifting weights. Like it's all about your nutrition and what you're doing too. And I remind them, I haven't always looked like this. This took years to build. And it's funny because I used to teach group classes and I would get that a lot. People would walk in, they'd see me. Well, I don't want to take your class anymore because I don't want to look like you. And I kind of laugh at them and I'm like, well, it's funny because I'm not taking these classes. I'm out on the floor actually.
That's
So
all I do is these classes. Yeah.
yeah, that's it. Um, so yeah, I try to have that conversation with them, but I've noticed a lot of the time they don't care to listen because they already have that misconception. Um, but yeah, I just try to tell them that it's a lot more than just these classes. It's a lot more than just lifting the weights a couple times a week. It takes a lot of dedication and a lot of sacrifice and a lot of time. So
Absolutely. And I always just say to that, so many people just don't realize that. And I always like to tell the story of when I was in college. I had a really good friend who came up to me and she said, Ryan, I see that you're making all these changes and that you are getting bigger and stronger. I want to go to the gym with you. But I just don't want to I just don't want to get bulky. And then I told her, I said, look, yeah. She's like, I just want to get more tone. And first of all, I did give her the thing where I was like, okay, tone, that shouldn't even be a word in the dictionary. Like, I want to scratch that out. It's like, what do you mean by tone? What do you want to change in your body? And she's like, oh, I just want to get lean down. I was like, well, that's going to take, but anyway, I went to a whole spiel with that. But I even told her, I said, look, the amount of weight that you carry in your purse weighs more than a lot of the dumbbells in the gym. And you're not gaining an ounce of muscle from lugging that thing around 24/7. Now, I don't know if she had like a dead sorority sister in her purse or something like that, but she had it like even for most people that I know, she had a very heavy purse. Like it was at least a good, 15, 20 pounds almost. So it was, I don't know, but yeah, that sort of convinced her. But I always say, going off that, the one thing that I think impacts women so much more positively than it does men in the gym is that confidence boost that it gives you. I mean, we've heard so many stories on this podcast of women who have, made life-changing decisions. It's really just helped them in their day-to-day lives. And I always say that is the one thing that you can take from the gym and use it to impact your everyday life. How have you taken that confidence boost that working out and this lifestyle can give you and use that to better your life?
I guess so I heard something on a podcast that I kind of was like, oh, that's perfect. I need to use that. They were talking about watching a woman lugging her luggage across the airport and unable to lift her bag up into the cargo thing. And that's what I actually tell a lot of my clients. I'm like, isn't it empowering to be able to do those things by yourself? You don't require some man to do it for you. You don't have to ask anyone else to do it for you. That you can do that. Like you can lift your furniture and move it by yourself. That you don't need someone in your life to help you with that. So I have those conversations and I take that away. Like I can do a lot of things on my own that I don't require someone else's help for. So again, it's having those conversations with people. And it is a big confidence booster because I mean, I don't know, I guess I see it cross over to even to my students. Like they see that I do things on my own and like I get respect from them as well because they see that I'm so dedicated and can do these things. And so it's just the respect you get from other people as well.
Well, you brought it up perfectly because I saved that question. I saved this question usually for later on the podcast, but one of the I mean, there's so many positive things that happened to me when I started working out and getting in shape. But the one negative thing for me is that you are going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars or bottled waters or anything that's sealed on tightly. You're the go-to person for that. I mean, I'm still at home with my parents. I'm moving out in a month, and every single time they come home with groceries, I mean, I basically have to lift the car into the driveway and carrying the groceries, being the good son that I am. I mean, obviously you can do that stuff by yourself, but do you feel that you get asked to do a lot more favors then ever since you started really getting in shape and people just assume that you can do stuff for them?
You know what? I don't, because my husband is 6'3" and 160 pounds. He's a big dude, so he gets asked all the time. But you know what's funny? I get asked all the time, "You can probably beat your husband up, huh?" I'm like, "Yeah, because big muscles means I'm aggressive and mean." Yep, you're right. It's so funny. Like,
I hear, and that's the
okay,
thing. That's one of the other myths that I love the bust too, because they're always, like you said, there is that misconception that, if you're really big and muscular, you're like aggressive and you're mean. Bodybuilders are some of the nicest people I've ever met in my entire life that I found in this podcast. I mean, they're some of the most humble and I mean, if you go up to some of these people in the gym, they're some of the nicest. They're willing to help you out, and I mean, that's why I thought that they'd be great guests on a podcast, because, like you said, I mean, there is that myth, and I've found that it's a complete 180. But yeah, I'm 6'3", just like your husband. Believe me, I know that struggle too. Where, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. Where I could have zero muscle at all, and people would be like, "Hey, you want to come help me move this stuff?" And I mean, I even got a text this morning from a friend. "Hey, I'm moving out. Can you help me move my furniture and stuff?" And I said, "Well, I can, but I mean, I don't want to, but I will. Being the good friend that I am. But I do have to ask, because it's the moment that I found out that you're a teacher." How many comments do you get all the time, especially from the guys, being that you're in a middle school, of like, "Oh, Miss Schumacher's jacked," or something like that, or just, do you deal with that on the regular?
yeah, I do. I have to rewind a little bit because I'm going to get yelled at if I don't fix this. I said he was 160 pounds. I should fix that. He's 260
I
pounds.
was going to say, like, I was literally going to stop, so I'm not even gonna edit that out, but like I was literally gonna say like 160 pounds. I was like, I'm 6'3", like 200 pounds. So I was like, that guy's
No.
jacked. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
I have to fix that or I'm gonna get yelled at if
Yeah,
he sees this. So
yeah.
so yes, I get it. Especially obviously when I'm closer to a show, and I'm wearing short sleeves, like they can see how vascular I am and stuff. And like I always get the, "Whoa, did you see her muscles?" or "Whoa, do you see her veins?" So I get those comments. My first year teaching at the middle school, we had a back to school night, and I actually had a mom say, "Did she used to be a man?" And I was like, "Okay, all right, here we go." But like I said, I think, and I take those
Please
comments
tell
as
me
a
you
grain of
failed that
salt.
kid.
I,
Please,
I what?
please tell me you failed that kid.
It was the mom. I don't take it out on
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
kids.
yeah.
So no, it's those comments. At this point, I just kind of laugh because they don't get it. I don't understand that perspective. They don't understand my perspective, and I just, whatever, teach their own. I love the way I look. I'm not ashamed of it. It's hard. Yeah, it's uncomfortable sometimes walking around, but and getting stared at, especially walking through Costco, even walking through the hallways of my school. Like yes, the kids looking at me sometimes and like their eyes getting big, the whispers that I hear. It does sometimes get uncomfortable, but I'm proud of that. I know the dedication and the sacrifice and the hard work that it takes. So that's in the back of my mind. Like, I look this way because I prefer to look this way, and I work my, excuse me if I'm not supposed to say this, but I work my ass off every day to look this way. So I'm proud of the way I look. So I'm not ashamed of it anymore. It does get uncomfortable sometimes to hear those comments, but I'm proud of it.
Well, and I really relate to your story, because in my middle school we had an assistant principal who, I don't even know if she competed or anything like that, but she was like in really good shape too. And like every time we'd run the mile, she'd come out and she'd run it with us and just do stuff like that. So yeah, that's, as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh yeah, that kind of reminds me of Miss So and So. So yeah, it's definitely, yeah, it's really just fascinating how people still deal with that ignorance. But I do think on the positive that in the last few years, especially with more exposure that the sports got, it has gotten better. At least that's the general consensus that I think for it all. But now, I mean, I already asked the one question, so I got to ask the other. Now, this is my favorite question, my audience favorite question to ask. Obviously, for fit guys, their clothing options can be limited, but it's even worse so for fit women. I mean, I always love to say, I mean, if you have big, broad shoulders, the moment you said that that's the one thing that really took off for you, I was like, okay, dresses aren't your best friend. Jeans are another thing that we hear of all the time. Where, I mean, If you have a big lower body and a small waist, jeans are not made for that. What have been some ways that you have found that you're able to compensate for the fact that your clothing options can be very limited, and the fact that you basically have to have two wardrobes, your prep wardrobe and your off-season wardrobe?
Oh, absolutely. That's what we joke all the time, myself, my clients, my friends. We joke all the time that we have it's not winter and summer clothing, it's off season and prep clothing. Um, so I don't wear jeans very often. I wear jeggings or leggings a lot. And then I do wear a lot of cutoff shirts because these shoulders don't fit into a lot. This back doesn't fit into a lot. So sleeveless shirts are my thing. Tank tops are my thing because otherwise I'm drowning in t-shirts. It looks silly.
Well, and I just
So
gotta say, I'm in a decent amount of shape, but if I was in that shape, believe me, I'd be going cut off during the winter when it's like negative 30 degrees up here in Minnesota. You kidding me? I'd be shoveling snow, just like with a cut off like jacket and just yeah. So believe me, you
but
gotta
I hate being cold. So I'm like, or big hoodies, like oversized hoodies. So there you go.
yeah, it definitely takes some getting used to. But one of the things that I was so shocked by, even before I started this podcast, when I first learned it, I would have never guessed it in a million years. And I think the general public doesn't understand it either, is that for so many of these bodybuilders, posing is the hardest thing for them. It's harder than their nutrition. It's harder than their working out. I mean, just like I said, because the general public mainly thinks that you guys just lift weights and then go on stage and pose. They don't realize that posing is, for a lot of people, the hardest thing. What has your experience with posing been like?
You pretty much nailed it. Posing is my weakness. Absolutely. You can see it on stage. Like I can be in the gym all day long. The nutrition is not that hard except for peak week. Um, but yeah, posing is my thing. I'm an introvert. So being the center of attention is really hard, which is really strange that I picked this sport. And having to be the center of attention for a few moments, like even on my wedding day, I hated walking down the aisle. I was so uncomfortable. But um, yeah, so posing is definitely my biggest issue. So what I used to do was hide and only do it like in my house and stuff. But to get over the fact of having eyes on me, like I just started posing in the middle of the gym, like in between sets or just right there in front of my cat is gagging behind
Oh, I
us.
was gonna say we saw it walking up and down the stairs, so I was gonna have a little thing when we're playing the podcast to be like cat alert and then have like an arrow pointing. But yeah, I love it when animals come on the podcast. So yeah, no worries at all.
Total hairball right
Yeah.
now. But anyways, squirrel. So yeah, so I would just I to help myself get over that, I just started posing in the gym, knowing that people had to look at me anyway. So I got to start getting used to it. It's still an issue. I still struggle with it. I'm still working on it, but I am getting more confident. So and I've hired coaches along the way. I worked with Kenny for a little bit, Kenny Wallach, and then his schedule didn't work, so I asked Sid Gillen to help me. So I've been working on it. Yeah, trying to get all the experts.
Those are the two names that we hear of all the time. I mean, everyone goes to Kenny, everyone goes to Sid. They really know their stuff. But I gotta say, so the first time I was in college, I went to my college gym. There was a bodybuilder, and he did the posing, in between his sets. And I'm just like everyone else. I was like, God, what a tool! I didn't know what it was for. I was like, geez. And then once I got to know him, I was like, oh, he's actually just training for. I thought it was just like some guy that would just be like, yeah, check me out like every time like he was done. So yeah, that's one thing that a lot of people deal with too, is that they don't realize that you guys are getting ready for a show. But yeah, that's again with the posing aspect, I would have never guessed that in a million years. But now, out of your figure poses, what is your favorite pose to do, and what is your least favorite?
I think my favorite pose is oh geez, what is my favorite pose? I'd say my back pose, which is strange. I mean, it still needs work, but I think it's my favorite just because I have seen my progression on that one. So, give me a challenge and give me something to work on and I'll work on it. So my back pose is we're finally figuring it out. My coach Damien has helped me figure out how to best show off my glutes and make them look a lot smaller. And then my least favorite, I would say, is the front pose. I just don't think it's a pretty pose on us. So the front pose, yeah. Yeah.
I always said, you know, if I ever competed for any division for men, the back pose would be my favorite, just because that's the one pose where you can kind of let your smile down, you can kind of let your face down a little bit. You don't have to smile. That's just the only reason why. I mean, I just be like, oh my god, I can breathe. But another thing that I was just so shocked by is we had an Australian guest on, and she was talking about how she had a few points docked because she accidentally let her smile down when they were doing call outs. She let it down for about, she said probably like 15, 20 seconds, and they dock you for that. So I always say that's why I think, in my opinion, your jaw muscles are probably the most sore thing after these shows, because you're just smiling the whole dang time. But yeah, it's just such a undervalued thing in the non bodybuilding community, is the posing aspect, where a lot of people just don't know about that. So I love to bring that up. But also, being that you're a figure competitor, you guys have to wear high heels, and I always say, you know, don't these people suffer enough, like doing everything with the lifestyle and then doing the posing? What is your experience like in those heels?
Oh, those heels are awful. And I think it's just the shoe itself, because it's plastic. So like I sometimes wear heels being a teacher, so I'm on my feet during the day, so the heels aren't such a big deal. It's just those shoes in particular, because that plastic on the shoes, and I have really wide feet, so they're super uncomfortable on me. So yeah, I think just the make of the shoes is the issue, really.
Yeah, I've heard that, you know, so many times. Just, yeah, those heels is just another thing where you're just like adding on to the checklist of what they have to go through. But one of the
And
fun
kind of
questions.
go back to your question on posing, it's kind of funny. Like I used to get offended as a teacher when people would say, "Those who can't teach." I think I'm a really good posing coach to other people, but I suck at it myself. Like I'm bad. Like I can't watch myself and give myself advice, but I can help other people. So I love helping people pose, but then when it comes to me, I'm just like, nope, I need someone else to help me. Tossing in the towel on that one.
So in some aspects, that is true. You're trying to tell us then. Those who can't teach.
Yes, yes, a little bit. I'll admit
Little
it.
bit. Hey, she's saying it, not me, everyone. Okay,
Yeah.
so don't come after. But no, yeah, I have two of my really good friends are both, one's a kindergarten teacher, another one teaches special education, and I still make that joke to them all the time, even though they know that I'm kidding. So yeah, yeah, I mean, yeah, but trust me, hearing what they go through, it's like, yeah, being a teacher is one of the most undervalued jobs on the planet. It's, yeah, what you guys go through. I could never deal with those little kids running around or dealing with even middle schoolers. Good God, out of all the grades, out of all the things to do, I always said, because I had a history minor, that I would have to do college. That's the only thing, because I'd have to have it where, like, I'd know that, like, people would sort of take like everyone would be there just because they wanted to somewhat be there. But yeah, more power to you. But now we go to a fun question. I mean, as you can tell, I'm one of the palest people you'll ever meet in your entire life, like we were talking about before. My thick Norwegian skin, where, I mean, being up in Minnesota, I mean, I either get burnt to an absolute crisp, or I just get, you know, farmer's tan, where, let's be honest, that is not a real tan. But bodybuilders get to get tan. What is that experience like for you? I mean, we hear so many stories about, you know, you see muscles that you never even knew that you had. Everything really seems to pop out. What is that feeling like for you when you get that tan on and realize, you know, everything's come into shape?
Um, it is when it all comes together. You have your suit on, your makeup, and everything. Like, and you look yourself in the mirror, like, yes, like this is why I was there for however long my prep was. This is what it all comes down to, and that is a lot of fun. The tanning experience itself is awful. I hate being cold. I absolutely hate it. And I'm cold the entire time and I'm miserable and it takes forever for my tan to dry. So I hate that process so much. But yeah, when you finally get that tan on and you just see everything come together, it's fun. It's fun to look in the mirror and you put that suit on, your sparkly, your jewelry, your hair, your makeup, and it's kind of like that final, like, yes, here we are. Like, I'm gonna go show this off. That's when that confidence is just like, boom, this is why I did it.
Can I just say, I'm not going to go into it myself, but I heard, you know, what the experience is like when you guys get that tan. And the first time I heard, I said, that's not true. They don't make you guys do that, do they? And then the second and third guest repeated that, and I was like, you're kidding me. So yeah, that's the one, that's probably the most shocking thing in this podcast. I'm not gonna go into it here because we've gone into it so many times on this podcast. But yeah, it's that for me was just like such an eye-opening thing where I was like, God, again, just the checklist of, you know, what you guys go through to get in. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just incredible. But a question that I ask all my guests, whether they be, you know, my up and coming bands and musicians or my bodybuilders, for my bands, I always ask, you know, what is that like when you get to go on stage and perform live in front of hundreds to thousands of people. That also applies to my bodybuilders. What is that experience like when you guys get to walk up on stage and show off all that hard work that you've worked months upon months, if not years on?
You know what? It goes by so fast, so fast. I love it, and I'm absolutely terrified by it all at the same time. Like I told you, being an introvert and knowing that all eyes are on me, like it gives me a little bit of anxiety. I'm not gonna lie, um, uh, but it is fun to finally show off. Like I said, show off all that hard work, and once you're up there and you're done with your routine and you're off in the diagonal, it's just like, yes, okay, I did it, and that's when it becomes fun for me. I know a lot of the girls are like, yeah, I live for the stage. I'm honestly not one of those people. So it is a lot of work for me, a lot of work for me. But it's so worth it. I love it. I love it, and it's a love hate relationship.
Well,
Let's put it
I
that
gotta say thank you for being so honest with that, because I've sort of gotten sick and tired of everyone, yeah, I live for the stage, like I come alive on that. I was like, there's got to be some of you that are just like, hey, it's fun or whatnot. But thank you for saying that, because I do love that people are honest with that. Where yeah, I'd be stressed out too if I had to walk up on stage and get judged by a lot of people. I'm somewhat of an introvert myself. I'm a mixture of both, but yeah, I mean, I find that just fascinating what that experience is like, and the fact that, like we were talking about prior to recording too. I mean, bands, they get to go on stage for 2 hours, but you guys, I mean, a couple minutes at most, and it just with all that hard work that goes into it. But a question that I love to ask all the pros that I have on the podcast, because, well, I'll just do a quick thing for everyone out there that isn't that familiar with the sport of bodybuilding. Getting your pro card for so many of our guests is the highlight of their career, just because that is the affirmation that all that hard work that you've put into it, you can now compete as a pro. You can now compete as a pro. I mean, you're really, well, you're always accepted in the community, but you're even more so, where it's just like you're a pro now. You can compete in pro shows. What was that feeling like when they announced your name and you realized, hey, I'm a pro now?
it took me a long time for it to sink in. Like it's still honestly is sinking in. I'm still so new to the sport, even though I've been. I don't know. I think this is my sixth show. It's still, yeah. When I heard my name, it was like I was just stunned. Like I didn't know. I'm like, really, like for real, me now. Um, and there was no.
Please tell me you did that on stage where you're just like, me, really, like me.
I just I was just like I said, I was stunned. Like I just kind of sat there for a minute, and I'm like, they just said my name. So yeah, and it took, and I tell everybody this when they get their pro card, and they kind of say the same thing to me. I just had a couple friends just get theirs, and I go, it doesn't really sink in until you step on the pro stage for your first time, and you're like, and you're backstage with all the pros, people that you've been admiring and inspired by for years, and you're back there with them, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm with these people that I've been following forever, and I've been watching their workouts and watching them pose, and here I am. Like that's when it finally sinks in, is your first time. So that was my moment. My pro debut was the moment where I was like, "Holy shit, here I am. This is awesome." And then it was kind of funny. I'm going to give you a little story. So my I did Governor's Cup in California, and we it was an NPC show, but the Figure Girls were there. And Wendy Fortino was there, Sandra Cahalis was there, Sarah Ford was there, all these girls that I just love, and watching them on stage. And I told my husband and my friend at the time, I'm like, I'm going to be up there with them someday. And a year later, I was in St. Louis on stage with Sandra Cahalis and Wendy Fortino, and I was like, it was literally a year later, and it was awesome to finally know that I was there and I succeeded. So that was huge for me. That was awesome. I loved every second of it.
I gotta say, we are working on getting Wendy Fortino and her husband on the podcast in a couple of weeks, so that's gonna be a lot of fun too. I followed them on Instagram for a while, and just all the times that they do that. But yeah, just hearing those pro show stories are just. I mean, I just love it, because, and for so many people, I mean, first of all, I gotta say, for the people that win their pro card on their first show, it's like, come on, really? Like they don't have to go through as much. I like the stories where people go through more, but yeah, just anytime anyone wins a pro card though, I mean it's just such a wonderful thing to celebrate. But probably the biggest myth and misconception that I love to bust on this podcast, because it's not talked about as much as I think it should be on Instagram, but there's so many people that they don't realize that look that you guys put on stage, that is not a sustainable look. I mean, we hear so many stories of people who, they might have not had as good of a coach as, like we were talking about before, with the importance of good coaching, where they don't realize that, hey, all that hard work that you put into it, you're not going to be able to maintain it. And granted, there are people that try to do that, and some people are genetically gifted where they can maintain that look for a little bit longer than others, or they can have an off-season look, which is a little bit more leaned out than the average person. But still, I mean, you are not going to be able to look that way 24/7. What is that like for you when you first? Well, it's sort of a two-part. So, what was that like when you first realized that, hey, the amount of hard work that I put in, I'm not going to be able to maintain this? And has that gotten easier for you as your career has gone on to accept that, you are going to have to go through changes?
It has absolutely gotten easier because you understand the process and the importance of the improvement season. My I would say it took 3 or 4 shows for me to finally understand it all. My first couple shows, not talking about my very first one 11 years ago, but when I really got back into it about 3 years ago, um, I would I hated going to the gym after a show because everyone saw me leading up to a show and how ripped and shredded I was. And then they would see me post show and I wasn't. I would get comments like, "Oh, I liked you. I liked the way you looked before you went to your show." Like I would get comments like that. So I'd cover up, I'd wear long sleeves, leggings, just cover up and hide. Um, I would sit in the parking lot and cry in my car before walking into the gym because I didn't want to go. So it was a huge adjustment, and it took a lot of mentors in my life to help me understand that. One of my coaches, Julie Mayer, who's also an IFBB pro, um, she sent me a text one time that just said, "You need to understand that this is part of the process. That your body needs this. It's not sustainable." I mean, huge mentor to me. She just said it perfectly in that text. And I think that was like that moment where, like, you know what, I just got to suck it up and know that it's part of the process. And now teaching my girls that I coach the same thing, like, it's not healthy for your body to stay that low. You need to build, your muscles need to grow, hormone wise, you need to get your health right. All of those things, like, that's all far more important than looking stage ready all the time, and understanding the importance of a healthy body. So I think that's my favorite part of this whole process is going through it myself and being able to educate other women that are going through it, and having that empathy for them and understanding it from their perspective and being able to explain my situation and my experience with it and educating them on that has been, I guess, my favorite part, because I think it's helped a lot of women who are competing feel a little bit better about it. Like, I see my clients going, "Yeah, I'm not where I used to be, but I can lift heavier now and my body feels good. My energy levels are good." I just had a client this morning say, my body fat's up, but I'm happy with the way I look. I feel great in the gym. My hormones are good. I'm eating well. I have great energy. I'm happier with around my family. I'm not so moody." So having them recognize that is huge, and it keeps me on track too, remembering that my body needs to do that and go through that too. So yeah, it definitely is easier now than it ever used to be, for sure.
For people, I mean, I just love to say, for people that aren't, as informed in the sport, I mean, it's so much more of a mental game than it is a physical game. I mean, I always say you can work out. I mean, you can get those lifts in. I mean, the physical aspect, I mean, you can physically do it, but the mental adjustments that you have to make are so much more harder, and they require so much more time, and just being able to accept things, where this is a sport that I think is is given so much attention for the physical aspect of it, but the mental aspect of it is vastly more of a battle that so many people have to deal with, which is why I love to ask that question.
Yeah, and thank you for pointing that out because you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely spot on.
Well, I always say, like, I've had some of the most in shape people on the planet on, and they talk about how, when they got started, they wanted to do it because they wanted to, like, feel better about themselves. and they've told me like I may have had like an 8-pack, but I still feel like I still don't feel good about myself. A lot of people go into this because they think that, you know, oh, it's gonna get me, you know, it's gonna get me a significant other. It's gonna people are gonna be more into me, or it's gonna get me, you know. They go into it for so many of the wrong reasons where they don't realize just become the best version of yourself. Don't try to be. Don't think that this is gonna give you something. It's gonna. I mean, yeah. That's the whole. I mean, that's a whole podcast that I could go into, or just the amount of stories that I've heard. But
And I like that you bring that up because I've talked to a lot of other competitors about this where you actually lose friends along the way because one, probably jealousy, but they don't understand the lifestyle and don't understand our commitment to it. And like you had brought up earlier when we were off camera about the sacrifices and the saying no to going out to drinks and parties and all of that kind of stuff. And so you do lose people in the process too. You don't always gain people in the process. So even like family members, um, a lot of family members don't even understand it, and so family members can turn on you as well.
yeah, it's definitely one of those sports where it really does change things so much more than I think a lot of other sports do. But I'll go into a positive question now that we just did that. So I mean, the one thing that I found, especially with female bodybuilding, so much more men than male bodybuilding, but male bodybuilding has this as well. But with female bodybuilding, there's such a supportive community, and like you just had a recent post that I saw that I love too, where it's like, you know, just the amount of love and support that you guys get from other competitors, and just how it's just such a close and tight knit community. And I think it's because, you know, so many people, they realize what you go through, all the other athletes. So it's sort of like it's sort of like when you suffer together, you bond. Sort of, it's a mutual suffering where, you know, then you really become closer. But you see like all these posts that people make and all these other competitors they're competing against them, like, wow, you're gonna do great, you look amazing. And you hear stories about, you know, how backstage everyone's so nice and friendly. How important is that to you? Just that the whole community is behind everyone, and you really are generally loved and cared for when you're competing in these shows.
It's been I guess the only way to describe it is incredible, honestly, to watch us backstage, not knowing what to expect because I can't say like in the NPC I had horrible experiences, but it just wasn't what I see now at the IFBB level. And I think it's a lot because we all know each other. We know who we are. We've been watching and following and, checking up on each other. We know who we are. But I think it's so important because there is that mutual respect. You know what you guys have been through and the things you sacrificed and how hard it is. And yeah, and that day, everything's great, and you're off. You feel great. You look great. Well, you don't really feel great, but you feel great. Some of those memories are gone, but it's been huge. It's been awesome. It just it's a fun community, and it's so incredibly important because being backstage with those girls. I mean, I don't know. Like I keep saying, it's just that mutual respect, and having fun backstage, talking about, oh, where are you guys going to eat after this? What treats do you have? Sharing the treats with each other, post show. It's that camaraderie is awesome. I love it for that reason. And just following each other's journeys on Instagram. It's fun. It's neat, I guess, because like I said in my post, yeah, it's a competition. We're competing against each other on stage. I want to win, but the second you're off stage, it's like, oh my god, you looked amazing. This looks great. This looks great. Like there's so much positive feedback from people, and I think that's cool. I think that's a really neat part of it.
You remind me perfectly of something when you said you feel great, you look great on stage. When the feel great part, I always like to compare that sort of to. You always hear some of these stories about people, you've been through this too. I mean, when you give birth, there's some moms that are like, oh, I want to have another kid. Where it's like, did you just realize what happened to you? Like, do you not remember what that was like giving birth? But then they're like, oh, I want to have another kid. It's like, okay, I mean, I guess if you want to handle it again, yeah, that's I think that's the perfect analogy, because my mom has said that, because I have two, I'm a middle child. I have an older brother and a younger brother, and I always tell my mom, I was like, after the first one, what really inspired you to keep going and have another one? She's like, oh, I just wanted to have more kids, and I was like, oh, well, I more power to you, I guess, but.
I've actually had one of my competitors say that exact same analogy, and I'm like, you're absolutely correct. You forget what you just suffered through. You forget, peak week and all of that. Yeah, absolutely. You forget because it's showtime.
But now that brought me on to the question that I love to ask too is, I mean, being a mom, I mean, I always say, that is just a full-time job in and of itself, being a teacher too, and being a bodybuilder. How are you able to time manage this and being able to make sure that, you spend so much time doing one thing, or you don't, overspend doing one time more than anything else?
Well, okay. When I first started competing, my daughter was younger, and I am fortunate. She's 22 or almost 22. She's 21 right now. So she's out of the house. She's on to college. She's running her own place. So my mom duties, as far as that goes, aren't as significant as they once were. So um, honestly, that part is off the plate. But yeah, being a teacher right now and taking care of 60 other kids, that's tough. That's been tough. My first 3 shows this year were during the summertime, and they were picked for that reason because it was during the summer and I could go through peak week during the summer. This peak week was a little different because I was in school. So, and, the whole going to the bathroom thing where teachers don't get to go, we don't, and drinking a lot of water makes it pretty challenging. So,
I can vouch
yeah.
for that. I can guarantee even last night there's about a good 4 or 5 times where you gotta, yeah, you basically become a water fountain. That's what I like to say. I mean, you drink from, yeah, it's that's a whole thing. But now we go to our, before we wrap things up, we go to our audience favorite, my personal favorite part of the podcast, a little questionnaire where we're gonna ask our guest about a half a dozen or so questions that we ask all of our other competitors that we have on, and we're gonna see how her answers stack up to everyone else that we've had on. So for our first question, what is one item that you always need to have in your fridge at all times?
Almond butter. Oh, wait, no, I take that back. Egg whites. Wait, mustard. I can't pick.
So okay, so I gotta say, mustard was the most shocking answer that I've ever had on this podcast before I really started having a lot of bodybuilders on. But for anyone out there who's wondering why the hell mustard, because they got to put some flavor on something. Because it's 0 calories, 0 fat. I mean, they put that on everything just to give it a little bit of flavor. So yeah, that was definitely that first answer. I was like, you might want to reevaluate your life if you're having to put mustard on everything. But hey, that just adds on to, like, if they have to put mustard on their stuff to get through it, more power to them. But now, out of all of your followers that you have on Instagram, what is one thing that you think that most people would be shocked and surprised to find out about you if they met you in person?
Oh, um, I guess, like I said, that I have a 21-year-old. It's like when I say that, everyone's like, "Wait, what? How old are you?"
I'd be
So,
I would be, that's definitely one shock thing that I'd be shocked for too. I mean, we always hear the, oh, like, one thing that I found so fascinating about a lot of it is female bodybuilders and male bodybuilders, is that a lot of them are like, oh yeah, I'm only like 5 feet tall or something like that. And I was like, oh, well, some of these photos that they take, I mean, they look, that's why, like, when I had the tallest competitive female bodybuilder on, she was my second health and fitness guest. And first of all, she lived 5 minutes away from me, and I had no idea. But like, she was 6'2", and then when she was like in those high heels, I was like, what? She's like, yeah, I'm like 6'6" or whatever, and I was like, okay, good. It's like, good God. But yeah, that's one thing that I've come
that's
to.
funny because I get that a lot too when people meet me. They're like, "Oh, I thought you were a whole lot taller," because I have such really long
Yep.
legs. This is what we discovered this weekend. We were talking about it with my girlfriend Nicole. Like, we have such long legs that we look a lot taller.
Yep.
So I'm 5'4". So
Yep. Well, I was gonna say, yeah, I was like, I am the exact opposite. Where, I mean, I'm sitting down all the time, so no one can see. But if they met me in person, you'd be like, oh, you're a lot taller than we thought. So yeah, I get that as well. But now, if someone were to walk up to you and say, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding, and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you'd like to see changed?
oh, this is a fantastic question. Wow. Why do you ask such hard questions? I mean, I know there's a criteria the judges need to follow, but it's so very different depending on the judge. So I would guess I would say if there's a criteria, then they all need to have the same criteria.
I That is the most popular answer we've had, and I agree with you 100%. Where I like to make the comparison where if you're to compete in shows in back-to-back weeks, one week they might be wanting like a super lean look, and then the next week they might want, a little bit more of a bulkier-ish look. They maybe want you to be a little bit more fuller. Where it's like, good luck to the competitors changing that in a week. So yeah, that's one thing. If they could have just a universal where it's like, we want this look, that I think that would really help out as well. But now, if you were able to go back in time and talk to the 18-year-old version of yourself, what would be the best piece of advice you would give her?
Um, the 18-year-old version of myself, I think I would tell her to, so many things are coming to my mind right now. Um, to keep your head up, that everyone's opinions of you don't matter. It's how you look at yourself and how you feel about yourself. Because I was in a very dark place at that point, and I've always been a people pleaser and always wanted to please people. And finally, I'm almost 40 years old, and I'm at that point where it's like you either like me or you don't, and I'm okay with that. So,
That's my same exact answer. It's like, you're not going to be able to please everyone. I was a huge people pleaser as well. Well, first of all, I'd go back and I'd give them, some stock information, invest in Apple, invest in Amazon, a little bit more, you can never go wrong with that. I might pull like a Back to the Future 2 and, give them, like, here's the sports scores for the next couple of years. You might want to make some bets on that. But yeah, other than that, yeah, I would say definitely the same exact thing. But if we were to talk to you a year from today, what are some goals that you'd like to have achieved when it comes to your bodybuilding, or just when it comes to your own life as well? Like, what are some goals that you would like to have accomplished if we were to talk a year from today?
well, of course, I'm going to say I want to be on that Olympia stage so bad. Like, that is my goal. So, yes, of course, I hope next year or someday within the next couple years, I am walking on that Olympia stage. That is my main focus right now. Absolutely. Also, I would love to build my coaching even bigger than where I am now, because I love it. I love sharing this passion with people. But my main focus right now is I want so badly to walk across that Olympia stage.
And honestly, we wish you nothing but the best of luck. I think you're going to do great. Just looking at you right now, I think you're going to do amazing. And for anyone who's interested, I mean, I'll leave a link to her Instagram down below and all of her other stuff. But lastly, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up? Other
Oh
than
my
other than
gosh.
your 160-pound husband.
Yeah, 160 pounds. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad I caught that and fixed it.
Yeah, I bet everyone's
Um,
everyone's everyone's probably thinking when you said that, like, wow, does she like bench press him or something like that? Then
and I'm like, wait, did I say 160 pounds? Shoot. Shout outs. I mentioned her before, Julie Mayer, my mentor. I seriously would not be in the sport anymore if it wasn't for her. Had a really bad experience, was going through some really tough times prior to all this, almost quit bodybuilding, period. And she brought me under her wing, and I'm here because of her. My coach Damien, what he has done with me, I started with him in February. He has totally revamped my thinking of bodybuilding and nutrition, and treats us like athletes, puts health first, puts recovery first. He has been absolutely amazing and awesome. I'm so glad I found him, and I'm so fortunate to be a part of that team. The team is amazing. Of course, my husband, I would not and could not do this without his support. He cooks for me, he cleans for me, he does my dishes. He is my rock. There is I am so incredibly fortunate to have someone who is supportive. It hasn't always been wonderful. It took a while for both of us to understand this lifestyle and get used to this lifestyle. So he's my world. Huge shout out to him, because this I'm doing this because of his support. So having him by my side is awesome.
That is awesome. And again, I'll leave a link to all that stuff down below. And everyone, go and give her a follow. And I cannot thank you enough for coming on the podcast. I really, really appreciate you coming on, sharing your story. I love having people come on and share. And again, we wish you nothing but the best of luck.
Thank you, Ryan. I
All
appreciate
right.
that
Well,
very much.
I couldn't think of a better way to end this. I mean, you look absolutely amazing. Can you give us a front double bicep before we wrap things up? And I
Front
can just say,
double.
yeah, front double. Look, first of all, just hold that for a second. Look, everyone, a mom, and she's almost 40 years old. It's like, are you kidding me, everyone? That's just absolutely ridiculous. Now, again, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Ryan.